Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Allison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hello, we're going to start today's episode of the podcast with a question. Here it is. Are your everyday errands extremely educational for your children?
Ooh, I hope so.
Yes, Allison.
Yes, I hope so.
In fact, they are.
Yes, in fact, they should be, and they are, yes. So one of the things I remember about my childhood is that my mom would bring me pretty much everywhere with her, even when it was, a task that you wouldn't really think to bring a child to. But she would bring me to the supermarket and the banks and to pay her bills and, shopping for random things. She took me everywhere. And that's how I learned about a lot of the stuff that goes on in the world and how to be like an adult, but at a very young age. So when she took me to the bank, at first it was just, this is how you interact with the teller, this is how you interact. And then it was, when I was older, it was like, this is how you count your money. And she would give me a little bit of money just to learn how to count it. And this is how you handle it. And then like little things like that. And I learned so much from that. Like going to the supermarket, she would go through the produce aisle and be like, this is a green pepper and we're going to cook this with it, and she would read me the boxes and stuff like that. I mean, it was just, I learned so much just by going with her on her random weekly errands on a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm listening to you talk about the sort of errands you ran as a child, and I thought people are sitting and listening to this thinking, we don't talk to people anymore. We go to an ATM machine.
I know.
We don't necessarily go to a teller. There are things that we don't do anymore, but we just do them differently.
Yeah.
And I think children still need to see and understand the workings of their world.
Yeah.
So it is important for them to come with us sometimes when we are making their world work.
Right. I think it also teaches that, like, mommy and daddy have a place in this world and they need to do things too. You know what I mean? And like, it kind of made me look at my mom a little differently. I'm like, oh, wow, she really is doing a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
imagine that.
She's not just home doing nothing. I'm like, wow, she really handles a lot of money, or she does this and she's doing this for the family. And like, it was just like, I don't know. It's like, it makes the child's world, I think, a little bit more real, And I know there's parents out there right now that are saying, oh, but it's so much easier to go grocery shopping without your child. Yes, it is.
And you can do that sometimes.
You could do that sometimes. You don't have to take them every single time. But when you do go and you do bring them, then make a whole little educational journey about it. Like, it's not just like, oh, here we go, we got to do this. Like, actually look at things and discover things with them and, and teach them a little bit, even if it is, this is how you sit in the grocery cart. If that's what your goal is for the whole shopping trip, then make that your goal. This is how, if it's, maybe you can have a whole talk about produce, and like, this used to grow in the ground and like, look at all these great things and we're going to cook them and they're healthy. There's so much you can do.
You can even just show your children, how like people will go and squeeze melons, and I frankly am not quite sure what they're looking for, I'll be honest with you. But people will go, I don't think anyone knows. I don't think anyone knows why we're squeezing them. But if you go over and you even just show them, here, feel this. It should feel soft here, or it should feel hard here, or look at the color of this. See how it's purple. Banana shouldn't be purple when we buy it. You're teaching your children colors and textures and smells and
or like, I remember going in the grocery store, and I always used to think it was cool when I was a kid that they had these sprinklers like in the produce aisle. You know what I mean? Cool. To water some of the vegetables. Yeah. And I remember my mom being like, well, they have to stay wet or they won't be, they won't be fresh. Some fruit and vegetables need that, and not all of them do. And I remember that, like, and I don't think I would know that, necessarily until I was later on. And I was like, oh, wow. And I used to just sit there and be like, how cool that they have this whole sprinkler system inside. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, just random things, or
My parents always took great pride in the fact that from the time we were babies, they took us out places to eat. They didn't have to necessarily be expensive places all the time, but they took us out to eat. And so they were very proud of the fact that their children understood how to behave in a restaurant from a young age.
My mom still talks about that to this day to pretty much anybody that will ask her. She goes, I could take my kids anywhere. They behave wherever I went. But I think the reason why we did behave everywhere we went was because she brought us places. So she taught us by going there how to act at a restaurant, how to act at the supermarket, how to act at the bank.
From the time we were really, really young.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing with my boys. I would bring them places from the time that they were babies so that they just sort of understood the place. There was never a time they didn't know what a grocery store was, you know?
Right.
There wasn't a time that they didn't understand they sit in the cart because they were sitting in that cart from the time they were in baby seats.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was no, like, this is just what you do. It wasn't even like, my mom had to teach me. I'm like, no, this is just what you do here. Like, you don't, my mom, like, tells this story. She goes, I never had to, like, leave the grocery cart in the middle of the aisle to leave the store. Like, because we would see that sometimes, like, when we were out, like, parents who were really struggling, fighting with their parent, like, whatever, they wanted certain toys or whatever at the store. And my mom's like, I just didn't have to worry about that.
Well, I think that can happen anyway. I think my children have two different temperaments, and I definitely have one who would get very upset in stores if I said no to things.
Yeah.
It didn't keep me from bringing him to stores, though.
Well, I think because if you stop bringing him to the store because he did that, or because he that's his temperament, then what are you teaching him? You know what I mean? That it's not okay to act like that, even though that's who you are as a person, and therefore we can't bring him to the store, like, because eventually that person grows up and he has to go to the store. You know what I mean? So, like,
right.
And you shouldn't be faulting him for how his temperament is.
That's right. I think that we have to teach them how to cope. But I think that there's so many lessons, like we were saying earlier, so many lessons we can give children in the course of their being interested in what we're doing. If we're shopping and we let them hold some of the things and we can talk about the colors and the letters and how they feel and heavy and light and how to make choices, even just how to make choices. You go to a supermarket now and there's 30 or 40 different types of spaghetti sauce.
My God, yes.
How do you make that choice?
Yeah. Well, like, one thing that my supermarket has now, which I think is really cool, and they didn't have this when we were kids, was they have mini shopping carts, and it has a little flag on it. It says customer in training. Okay. Right. But one time I was at the store, and usually the kids are just wheeling it around. The parents are putting it in the cart for them. But one time I saw a parent show the child, this is how you place this in the cart so that it doesn't break. You know what I mean? You don't want to put your eggs on the bottom. Like, she was, and the child was only like maybe 5, 6, and she was wheeling around the cart, and she would delicately place everything in. She goes, you don't want, and the mom was actually teaching her, this is how you put things in the cart. This is how you hand things to the cashier. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
This is gentle. This is how you be gentle.
This is how you be gentle. You don't want to squish things in here, And I remember my mom teaching me that, like, but in the big cart. My mom, when you go grocery shopping with her, like back in the day, now she's not so much, she would constantly be rearranging her shopping cart. Constantly. And like, Ma, just leave it in there. And she'd be like, no, we don't want the bread, and like all this stuff. And I remember that as a kid. Now they have these little carts that can kind of just teach them how to do it, on their own, and have, like, well, if you do shove it in there, it might break. And, it's just kind of cool, like, that's there.
Right.
Like that. Like, even little things like that, I think, are just teaching children how to take care of things.
I think that it also is a positive relationship builder.
Yes.
To take children on errands.
Yeah.
And I think when they're very young, you can establish the notion of, when we're in the car together, we're going to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Which was something that was always so important to me with my kids.
Yeah. I remember having a lot of conversations in the car.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like a enclosed safe place. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just you. It is. It's just you and your mom or your dad. You know what I mean? It's an enclosed safe place. So it's like, whatever we say in the car is safe, and I don't know. I remember playing games with my parents in the car too. Like I remember like it wasn't just a place that you put your headphones on and you zone out, or now they have the TVs in the car, they're watching TV instead. But like
I think
maybe,
it's important to
yeah,
at least mix it up and have your children
yeah,
understand that sometimes we're going to have conversation in the car. Children, especially when they're young, the ages that Allison and I talk about on this podcast, children need to be having conversation to practice their receptive and expressive language skills.
yeah,
And what that means is expressive language is when they speak and try to express themselves and tell you something, and receptive is how they process what you tell them. And
yeah,
without enough conversation, they don't get to practice those listening skills, those processing skills. So I think it's important for them to run errands with you because it is a special time. Kids see that very often when they're young anyway, maybe not when they're teenagers, but when they're young,
yeah,
they see that as a very special time with you.
yeah, yeah.
And I
And
understand that sometimes you're going to need to go without them. You're going to need to leave them back with another adult for whatever reason, but sometimes you should intentionally take them with you.
yeah, I think it models a lot of behavior too. Like this is how you talk to a server at a restaurant. This is how you interact with other adults. And then you as a child is kind of like seeing that and you're like, oh wow, okay, that's how and it kind of goes to like this is how you talk to strangers who are, because it used to be stranger danger, don't talk to any strangers. But then at the
Right.
same time, here's mom talking to the bus driver, she's a stranger. Here's mom talking to the teller, she's a stranger. I don't know her. So it kind of goes to the like, it's okay to talk to people, and this is how you interact with them. And the conversation between your mom and the bank teller is different than the conversation that you have with your mom in the car. So it kind of teaches like these different types of conversations that you can have throughout the day.
Right.
You know,
Right. I think they need that. And I think that we also need to explain some really basic social skills to them. Even things like what you're doing when you leave a tip. You go
yes,
out to eat. Why are you doing that? Why are you leaving a tip? What is a tip? Why do we tip people who serve
right,
us?
right, right. Like, because I don't think, how else would you learn that? Do you know
I
what I
don't
mean?
know. Do you
Like,
know how many
I don't know
times
how.
when my kids were teenagers, you know how many times they would tell me that they would go out to eat with a friend when they were old enough to go themselves and that their friend didn't realize you have to leave money for a tip? Something so simple like that we don't
Simple.
explain to kids. And so how would they know?
Right.
Or what,
But
they just don't know what to do if we don't tell them what we're doing.
right, but if they see you do it at a restaurant, you can explain it. Like, we're going to leave this person a tip because they served us very well, and maybe that your son's friend, maybe never went to a restaurant with his parents
Yeah, I don't
before.
know. But I do think it's
Or
important.
it could also
Errands,
be like they're paying by the credit card. You know what I mean? And so, like back when we were kids, you had to leave money on the table.
right?
It was there. It was obvious. Like we're leaving, and you would be like, as a kid, be like, "Ma, you're leaving your $5 bill there." It'd be like, "Why
Well,
are you leaving money here?"
now we have the
Now,
kiosks. We don't even have to hand the card to the person. You
I
can
know,
pay right on kiosks sometimes that are on your table.
yeah. But I think when you're going through that whole thing, like talk about it with your child. Say, hey, this is how we pay. We pay with a credit card, but we're still there's a process, and and go through that because I know the world has changed. And when I was a child, everything was paid through by cash. Like if you used a credit card, that was like odd to use a credit card at a
you're
restaurant.
you're
You know what
dating
I mean?
yourself. Yeah, you're
I know.
definitely dating yourself.
but but now it's just so commonplace. Like I rarely have cash on me. So like, but I still think it's important to talk to your child about like, this is what we do. We still need to pay. We can't leave until we pay the server, or we need to use the kiosk at some of these restaurants, but this is what we need to do before we leave, you
Yeah,
know?
I think so. I think so. Allison, the topic of educational errands was your idea. So go
It
ahead and
was.
sum it up for us.
So it's very important to bring your child to places. Maybe not every time, but at least every so often bring your child to the supermarket and the bank and the restaurants and make it a little bit of an educational journey, I would say. Like touch and feel things at the supermarket, Teach them why you're paying and how you're paying a tip. How do you talk to other people? You know, because I learned a lot of my social adult skills, I think, by having my mom bring me to places like that.
And what great memories those are.
It was.
Can we just say in the last couple of seconds of this episode, what great memories you are creating with children. And it amazes me all the time that the memories that my children talk about the most are the simplest things.
Simple ones.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyday life, simple things. You know, the vacations or whatever else are nice too, but their everyday life memories are the ones they really treasure. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. We will catch you next time on the podcast. Hello, wonderful podcast listeners. This is Cindy. Allison and I revealed really big news on our recent live episode. We now have a website dedicated to this podcast. Go to howpreschoolteachersdoit.com to read stuff we've written, to check out the latest news, see the topics for upcoming episodes, and to contact us. We'd love to hear from you.